physically, but mentally still you are very alert, and there is a spirit, that is very visible. One point that came out very strongly was that there is an element of discrimination against agriculture, and within that the rainfed agriculture and then against the farmers, etc. And you are giving examples of angel funds, etc. This is obvious, right? If you this morning we paid homage to one of our great civil servants, and also the people's civil servant, Dr. Yugandhar. I was aghast at last week when I saw on the news Satya Nadela's father dies. Now tell me, this was the English media carrying the news. Okay, yes, Satya is a great man, he's become CEO of the whole India, is proud of him, etc. But Dr. Yugandhar is no less. He is a man who has worked for the poor of this country. He may not have been a public figure, but he was a man of mind, man of brain, man of intellect, man of commitment. As I was telling you, he is the man who sort of progenitor of employment assurance scheme, which then evolved into employment guarantee scheme and watershed, etc. That shows, the feudal attitude or the hierarchical mindset that we have, where we think that anything that has got to soiling your hands is not a respectable job. That's what it means. Okay. From morning, what we have learned and discussed and understood is that there is a land degradation. So what is the meaning of land degradation? Dr. Ajit Kumar has told us very clearly. We understood how to prevent this land degradation, what to do when it happens, what money we require, what is the benefit cost ratio of investments, how to mobilize funds. We also understood that there is something called technology versus people, and how to convert that into technology and people. And as we do this, people are more important than technology per se. We have deliberated on all these things since morning. What ultimately it boils down to is that if we have made so much more in investments in irrigation, for creating irrigation and irrigated areas, the question that we must ask ourselves is, has it stopped land degradation, or has irrigation contributed to land degradation? And if we have made less investment in rainfed areas, watershed areas, has it helped in checking the land degradation? And if we need to move forward, should we be putting one against the other, or should we be utilizing the complementary relationships or strengths of the respective interventions? So the point that comes out is that we need not always look at this versus that, this or that. What we should be looking at is, what do I need to check land degradation under different landscapes? What do I need to check land degradation in irrigated systems, in rainfed systems? The biggest, learning of today is that why does ecology gets degraded? It gets degraded because of economics. Everything ultimately boils down to economics versus ecology. Imagine some 20,000 years ago, no pressure of people, everything was a green pasture, it was a pure water, it was ecology in its pristine purity. And over these 20,000 years, what we see is this. So as long as people have to live, survive, there will be pressures. So if we want to check land degradation, and then where it has occurred, to rejuvenate it? The answer lies in an optimal marriage between economics and ecology. Unless we are able to do this thing, no matter what technology, what practices, what amount of money, what magnitude of commitment we have, we will not be able to do that thing. Now, taking for example the illustration of shifting cultivation which Madam Alka was referring to. Why does that person in the tribal area practice shifting cultivation? The most fit land for cultivation in tribal pockets is the class 4 according to the USDA classification. Even that class 4 land available in all these tribal pockets is of very minimal extent. It is not enough for them to sustain, and therefore they have no option but to climb up and practice agriculture in class 5, class 6 and even class 7 land classification, land categories. And that has happened because when he was hunting and gathering the food from the forest areas, met degradation, and over the last 50 years in particular, he had to fall back more on cultivation than rely on forests, including degradation of minor forest produce. And we had no proper policies even to ensure that the minor forest produce were fetching him good incomes. I'm just taking this as an example only. And this has happened with every single ecosystem in our country. Okay? So, the shifting cultivation became more rapacious. Otherwise, he had evolved a technology of enabling the land to rejuvenate itself by having the longer system of 5 years, 10 years, which came down to 4 years, 20 years back, 30 years back. It got 2 years, and it come to a system where he has got to do it continuously, and therefore there is absolutely no nutrition left there, no soil left there. So the principal thing is ecology and economics. Why the watersheds don't survive after we have moved out? It's only because we have not looked at all the stakeholders in the watershed. Any landscape is utilized not just by the farmers, in fact it is more utilized by the non-farmers, the landless agriculture labor, who need to collect their firewood from there, who need to graze their cattle and sheep there, and who need to pick up water from there. And unfortunately our interventions are always compartmentalized. They have never taken into account all the stakeholders as part of the ecosystem, the human society ecosystem and the larger ecological ecosystem. So any intervention which has to reconcile the conflict between economy and ecology must take into account all the stakeholders, human beings and their companions in cattle, etc. Unless we do that, we will not succeed. And at the ecosystem level, it has to be always a landscape approach. In watershed also, for example, we are looking at ridge to valley. But there is actually something beyond that also. So we have to now actually start looking at, while yes, watershed in a way looks at the microcosm of that landscape, I think we should be really now, from the perspective of neutralizing land degradation, look at the landscape as a whole. Let us first neutralize the wrong perception among the people of the society that agriculture is to blame. Let us neutralize this perception that forest is to blame. It is people outside agriculture and forest who are to blame first. Who asked them to come into this area? There is creeping encroachment into this production zones for forests and agriculture, growing industrialization, growing mining activities, growing infrastructure, growing urbanization, growing habitation. We have not addressed those things. Today, you go to any metro or in large city, not only the soil is toxic, but water is more toxic. We don't have proper treatment systems either for water or for solid waste. And the leaching is all contributing to the toxicity and degradation. After all, Dr. Rajiv Kumar rightly said, what is degradation? It is loss of fertility. And fertility is lost for various reasons. So these are part of the landscape. So the point that Dr. Samirreddy brought out is appropriate. That we need a comprehensive land policy for this country. We have not had one. Imagine after 70 years we have not had a comprehensive land policy. And a land policy, yes, broadly we know, 1/3 for agriculture, 1/3 for forest, 1/3 for other aspects. But these are all organically linked. They are not compartmentalized. So unless we are looking at it in a more wholesome manner from a landscape perspective and say very clearly what land I am ultimately going to use for construction and what kind of urban planning am I going to have. Am I going to allow horizontal expansion the way New Delhi is? Or am I going to ensure that it's going to be vertical growth like in Mumbai is? We must decide on all those things. We must have to decide what am I going to do with solid waste management dumps. How am I going to use those lands after reclamation? How am I going to use the mining fields after the mining has been exhausted? So all these are issues. Unless we are able to concern ourselves and answer these things, we will not be able to actually work only with agriculture or forest lands. It is not to say that we should not be working here, because it is not possible that we are going to work simultaneously across this 329 million hectares of land, plus the exclusive economic zone in the water bodies, in these oceans and seas, because they are also part of the ecosystem. We will have to therefore first address what is a comprehensive land policy, land use policy, and then and that broader land use policy is to have a component for all the subsystems: land, soil and water management policy, forest management policy, agriculture management policy, urban management policy. So we need to identify all the components which are integral to the larger landscape policy. So the larger landscape policy is land use policy. So I think that's what we have learned today. I just thought, let me make this loud thinking so that we voluntarily don't take the blame, because all of us sitting here are concerned with agriculture, land, water, etc. Yes, we should not be hesitant to commit ourselves to working for our respective zones, but simultaneously do understand, do appreciate that others are also villain of the piece. Otherwise everybody keeps saying forest is not there, agriculture hi ho gaya. Yes, it's true, but that doesn't mean that only they are the culprits. So we need to create this right perception so that everybody understands that they need to work there, right? Otherwise, suppose you go to a city like Bangalore, we had 392 lakes only 2 decades back. Today we are left with 112 lakes only. Even if today we manage those 112 lakes, Bangalore would be the best city in terms of water bodies anywhere in the world. Even today, we lost 280 water bodies. Who stopped us from, using this properly? And this is so, whether it is Hyderabad, whether it is, Baroda, all these cities are similar. So I guess that, we need to create that awareness. But then that would be too diffusing the responsibilities. So let's come back to our agriculture and issues, and more so about this degradation. There's so much that we can do, and I must thank every one of you. You have brought up very good issues. I think it was a great learning. I'm sorry I was not able to sit through because I was called elsewhere. But what I heard and the beautiful summation that Rakesh made today, supported by Dr. Vidachari, I think I'm convinced that there's a fund of knowledge, there's a fund of experience, fund of expertise. We need to put all these things together And the biggest enemy of the volume of information is our inability to make sense of that. So I think we need to organize that information in a proper manner. In a way, it becomes big data analytics. It becomes big information analytics. So that we're able to draw proper lessons and put them in a logical and sequential manner as to what am I going to do this thing, how am I going to do this thing. So I would request a group of people, Sabyasachi, Dr. Ravindra, who have really good understanding of this, to sit and then build this corpus of information in a logical manner and give us the lessons, okay, so that we will actually put them into policy framework, program designing, and actually roll out action plan. So let me thank every one of you, our panelists, Dr. Alka, Dr. Venkateshwarlu, Dr. Ravindra were excellent, and I must thank all of them, thank every one of you. Anita, I think you deserve the best of thanks from all of us, because you so patiently conducted right from morning. So I think let us give a big hand to Anita.